Welcome to Stagecoach Podcast, where you will find the best Western books on the market. This podcast is brought to you from Dusty Saddle Publishing, also referred to as DSP, the home of Western excellence, where around the world people still enjoy the Old West, and DSP works hard to provide great Western novels for readers to enjoy. First, let's dive into the plot. Finn Sullivan continues his adventures in the beautiful but unforgiving American West in this continuation of his exploits, featured in Finn Sullivan, Mountain Man Wolverine. Finn and his loyal Ute partner, Little Dove, find themselves on the dark, dangerous trail of a sadistic, cold-blooded Assiniboine Indian appropriately named Rattlesnake. Along this mission, they meet new folks from far-off lands and find themselves in more than a little bit of trouble. Will they catch up to the murderous, poisonous Rattlesnake, or will they succumb to the punishing West before exacting justice? In this episode, we'll be reading Finn Sullivan Mountain Man, Rattlesnake, Book 2 by author Scotty V. Casper. This is Part 5. Without further ado, join us as we read.
Chapter 9. Defending Catalina and Little Dove. The following morning, everybody hustled around taking care of the morning's chores in preparation for taking to the trail, but Catalina just sat on her stump looking grumpy. Little Dove rustled everybody up breakfast, consisting of coffee, bacon, and biscuits cooked in her new Dutch oven. She took a plate of the breakfast foods and a cup of coffee over to Catalina. Catalina turned her nose up at the sight of the meal, so Little Dove dumped out the coffee and threw the food in the fire. Finn walked over to Catalina. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Of course I can ride. I am a splendid equestrian." "A what?" "Oh, never mind. If the big Frisian is broke to the saddle, we'll put you on him." She rolled her eyes back into her head. "Of course he is broke to the saddle. But I don't want to ride him. I want to ride in my carriage and have him pull it." "No, we're not going to take that carriage along with us. Hostile Indians will be able to see it for miles around." "Do you want to lose that beautiful head of hair?" "All right, you are just beastly," Catalina said. "But I have a lot of cash stowed away in that carriage, and I'll want to take it along. So when I get to Juan Hernandez's rancho, I can go ahead and buy that land. Then I suppose I can hire men to build and run the rancho for me." "No problem. We can put your money in our packs." "Surely you jest?" "No, I'll keep my money with me." She looked around. "Do you people think you can keep your grubby hands off of my money?" Finn gritted his teeth. It was all he could do to keep from slapping her, but he knew he wouldn't do it because it just wouldn't be gentlemanly. "We are not the sort to try and steal your money." "I suppose that remains to be seen, doesn't it?" "I still might cuff her if she doesn't get more civil," he thought, but he decided against it. Then the damnedest thing happened. Catalina's eyes filled with tears. "What's wrong?" Finn asked. "What do you think is wrong?" "I just lost my husband, and I must admit I loved him dearly." Finn scratched his head. "Lady, that's the first thing you've said that causes me to like you even in the slightest." "Oh, great. Do you think that matters to me?" "Let's ride." Just as they were mounting their ponies, the wholly unexpected happened. The ground began shaking, and the shaking affected Oliver the worst. He had just managed to climb in the saddle and get his injured leg situated comfortably when the shaking began and he lost his balance and fell off his horse and landed on his injured leg. He cried out in pain. They were having an earthquake, and that was an unusual occurrence so far inland, because most earthquakes on the continent happened along the west coast, and scientists had yet to figure out why. The tremor went on for about 10 seconds, and the earth actually rolled in waves like the ocean. It scared everybody. They thought the earth was going to open up and swallow them. The horses and donkeys started throwing their heads, prancing sideways, and then outright bucking. Many of their packs got thrown off and landed in the dust. The tiny donkey foal had a complete fit, and he dashed away down the trail, kicking up his heels and bucking. Even though they were frightened, everybody had to laugh over it, except Oliver. He was in too much pain. "Don't worry about it," Finn said. "The little shit will come back. I'm sure he won't want to get too far away from his mama's teat." That brought even more laughter, except Catalina. She thought the statement was coarse. Oliver lay on the ground moaning. Falling on his wounded leg hadn't done it any good. "Help me back in the saddle. I have another tale to tell." Finn shook his head. "Oliver, after what just happened, we really aren't in the mood for any of your mountain man tall tales. You'll like hearing this, I think." Finn and Little Dove put him back in the saddle, and it wasn't easy because Oliver was a big man, nearly as big as Finn. Back in 1811, when I was a younker, I was in another earthquake. "Oh, really?" Finn said. "The earthquake originated in New Madrid, Missouri, but it was felt as far away as New York City and Montreal. Believe it or not, the Mississippi River actually flowed backwards for a couple hours." Finn laughed. "Now, Oliver, you have told us whoppers, but this one tops them all. The Mississippi River started flowing backwards. Come on. God as my witness, it did. Riverboat men in flatboats suddenly started going the wrong direction, but in the end, they survived the ordeal. All right, I'll buy it." During the years 1811 through 1812, there were a total of 2,000 earthquakes in the central Midwest. Now, Oliver, come on. God as my witness. There were animal warnings. Snakes and other hibernating animals came out of the ground and were highly agitated. Oh, and I suppose trolls came out from beneath bridges and cattle sprouted wings and flew away. Finn, I'm telling the truth. All right, I believe you. I really do. Let's ride and hope we don't get hit with another tremor. Yep, let's ride. My leg is feeling a little better. Catalina decided to chip in her 2 cents. She looked at Oliver with contempt. You are such a disgusting liar. You wouldn't know the truth if it slapped you in the face. Lady, I've had about enough of your lip. If I didn't have this hurt leg, I'd take you over my knee and paddle your behind. Yeah, you'd try. They rode all day long, and there weren't any more tremors. That evening, they found a pleasant little glade tucked in next to the Yellowstone River, and they set up camp. It had good grass, firewood, water, and it was a good defensive position against attack. Everybody pitched in and helped set up the camp, even Catalina. She unsaddled the Frisian and removed all of the packs, and then she took the magnificent stallion to water. Then, the unexpected happened. She stepped in and helped pitch the tent because there was lowering clouds, and they thought it might rain. Yeah, it's not to help us. She doesn't like the idea of sleeping under the stars. Finn thought. Then he had to chuckle to himself. But I imagine she's nervous about getting in that tent with us, and I can't say that I blame her. Although I'm sure Oliver will remain a perfect gentleman, and I'll work hard at keeping my eyes off of her, or Little Dove will take her knife to me. I just hope she can tolerate Oliver snoring. It's loud enough to wake the dead. Little Dove made a stew and piping hot coffee for their supper. She held out a bowl of the stew and a cup of coffee for Catalina. "Is the bowl and cup clean?" she asked, "because I do want to eat it because I'm terribly hungry." "They are clean enough," Little Dove snapped. "I wash everything after every meal. If you are worried about it, you could help me wash the dishes after every meal." "Yes, I'll do that." She tried a spoonful of the stew. This stew is surprisingly good." After she said that, she went to work demolishing the bowl of stew, and she sopped it up with a couple biscuits. "You know, I'm a pretty good cook. If you'd like, I can help cook our meals. You would be the head cook, and I could be your assistant." Little Dove shook her head in wonderment. Catalina was actually being nice. "That's a good idea," she said. Everybody marveled at the transformation that came over Catalina. They considered at that point that possibly she wasn't just a 100-proof bitch, as everybody suspected. Catalina cleared her throat. "Listen, people, I want to apologize for the way I have been acting. You really do seem to be very nice people. It's just that losing my husband has been very hurtful, and I'll suppose the loss has turned me into an ogre. Please forgive me." "Well, I'll be damned," Finn said. "We forgive you." Little Dove stepped quickly over and gave her a hug. "Catalina, we are sorry for your loss." Catalina began crying and blubbering, and Little Dove joined in. The men stood by and fought back their emotions. It wasn't manly to get to bawling and carrying on. The following morning, the sun pushed itself just above the eastern horizon, and as it crept upward, shards of light spread across the landscape. All of the darkened crevices were filled with golden light, and as a result, the morning promised a new day, a new dawning, a rebirth. "Pretty morning," Oliver said. "That's the thing with these here Rocky Mountains. They are so beautiful and majestic, they get into a man's blood. But of course, there is the other side of the coin. There is the ugliness out here, and the need to contend with injuries, killings, scalpings. So it's not all a bed of roses, but I wouldn't live anywhere else." Catalina smiled as she ate her breakfast, and it was a nice thing to see. "Oliver, you surprise me. You seem so coarse and unlettered, then you speak of the Rockies in such a lyrical way. I suppose there is more to you than meets the eye." "Why, thank you, Catalina. You were so mean towards me at first. I can hardly believe you have changed." The sun spread its light up a nearby hillside, and nearly the entire hillside was sprinkled with wildflowers of every color and description. "Speaking of a bed of roses, aren't those flowers beautiful?" Catalina said. "Yes, they are," Oliver said. "They remind me of a poem I memorized when I was in grade school back in Missouri. It's the only poem I know. I remember my 6th grade teacher, and she was the sort that didn't tolerate any nonsense in her class. You either sat and learnt, or you got the hell out. If I recall, her hair was red and done up in a tight bun, and her rear end looked like it was about 10 axe handles across." "That's not a very nice thing to say," Catalina said. "Shame on you." "It was rude, but more than likely the woman is dead now, so she'll never know what I said. Anyway, those flowers remind me of that poem she made us all memorize. Who wants to hear a little bit of it?" "Here we go. Do we have a choice?" Finn asked. "Nope. Here goes. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze." William Wordsworth. Finn shrugged. That's nice, but you aren't going to finish it, are you? We've got to get on the trail. No, I just wanted to give you a taste of it. I always liked it. For some reason, the donkey foal had a fit and started racing around and kicking up its heels. See, even that dang little donkey wants to escape your poetry recital and get to moving, Finn said. So, let's ride, Oliver said, but I'm gonna need help getting into the saddle. This danged leg is killing me this morning. In the early afternoon, they noticed dust in the trail behind them. It looked to be about 3 miles back. Finn looked worried. Oliver, do you think we have Indians dogging our trail? I've heard tell the Cheyenne in this region aren't happy with all of us trappers. It's hard to tell what's back there. Oliver, would you ride back and see who's coming up behind us? There's a lot of dust, so there must be a bunch of them. Yes, I'll go check, and I'll try to catch up to you before you set up camp. If I don't get back in time, make sure you find a campsite that will be easy to defend. Find a place where they can't come at us from the rear, and where there is a long stretch of open ground to the front and sides. So they can't sneak up on us, and find a place where they can't hide from our rifle fire. That's good advice, Oliver. Now I have some advice for you. Be careful when you go back. Don't let them see you. I've gotten quite fond of that ugly mug of yours. Dang it, I'm not ugly. He's not ugly, Catalina said. He just needs some cleaning up and a good shave. Damn, Oliver said, and he wheeled his horse around and took off. Finn located a nice place to camp. It was right in the inside loop of a river, so the enemy couldn't approach from behind or from either side, unless they wanted to swim the river. Out in front was a tract of sagebrush, so the enemy would have 300 yards of sagebrush to negotiate. It is true, they could hide behind the sagebrush, but Finn knew it wouldn't slow down a .50 caliber ball. They watered the horses and donkeys, erected a tent, built a fire, and Little Dove and Catalina cooked supper. Before long, Oliver came riding into camp. Are you hungry? Catalina asked. I'm so hungry I could eat the saddle blanket off a mule, Oliver said. How vulgar, Catalina said, shaking her head. What was back there? Was it Indians? Finn asked. You're not going to believe this, but it was a herd of wild horses. The leader was a magnificent buckskin. Boy, would I give anything to have that horse. I'll bet he can run like the wind and go all day without tiring over much. I'm thankful it wasn't Indians, Finn said. Let me get something to eat then. I've got a few stories to tell. I was afraid of that, Finn said, chuckling. Several days later, the foursome rode into Pierre's Hole, the site of the 1832 rendezvous. The rendezvous wasn't due to kick off yet, but it looked like several hundred people had already gathered there in anticipation of attending the cherished event. There were trappers, gold miners, Indians, and people of many ethnicities. The Indians had set up teepees lined along the confluence of the Teton River and Bitch Creek. Later on, the river flowed through mountain meadows and into Teton Canyon. Trappers had lean-tos and tents set up helter-skelter across the mountain meadows. Everything seemed relatively tame because William Sublette hadn't shown up with the trade goods and whiskey. Sublette had a contract with the Rocky Mountain Fur Company that year to take in the trade goods. When the rendezvous kicked off, if any rendezvous of the past were any indication, there would be drunkenness, gambling, fist-fighting, knife-fighting, horse races, trading, and rutting with the squaws. The trappers would have been isolated all year, and when they all gathered for the rendezvous, many of them would go completely nuts. Some of them, the foolish ones, oftentimes would head back to the trapping grounds, completely broke and with barely enough supplies to carry them through another year. Hangovers were a given during the rendezvous, repeated Hangovers. The trappers would wake up in the mornings feeling terrible, so they would start on the whiskey again. They called it the hair of the dog. The foursome stumbled onto a scene that foreshadowed events to come. 5 trappers and as many squaws were in a meadow near the Teton River, and they were all naked and rutting like rabbits. Apparently, somebody had brought in some whiskey because they were all soused. One brutish-looking fellow with so much body hair, he resembled a bear, noticed Catalina and Little Dove, and his eyes nearly popped out of his head. "Bring those little heifers down here so we can use them. We've pert nigh worn out these damn squaws." "Not on your life, you drunken oaf," Oliver said. "Sonny boy, talking to me like that could get you hurt." "Is that right?" "The only way you could hurt me is if I got a whiff of your breath." The grisly-looking fellow stood up and put on his underwear and came at Oliver, and Oliver limped forward to meet the attack. "Are you crazy?" Finn asked. "You can't fight anyone with that injured leg of yours," and he stepped between Oliver and the drunken lout. "So, you're the one to take me on? You realize, of course, that when you lose, we'll have those women of yours here in the meadow as our playthings," the drunk said. "That'll be the day," Fane said, and he hit the man flush in the mouth and knocked him down. "Kill that son of a bitch," one of his companions said. The hairy fellow shook his head, jumped up, and rushed at Finn and threw a combination of hooks and overhand rights. But he was drunk and slow, and Finn put him down again. The fellow shook his head again, stood up, and rushed at Finn again, all crouched over. He apparently intended on tackling Finn, and once he got him on the ground, he would maul him and try to kill him. It didn't work. Finn clutched the back of the man's head with both hands and yanked his head down, and then Finn brought a knee up to meet his face. The knee and face collision made a sickening thud, and the hairy fellow's nose was shattered. He rolled onto his back unconscious, and blood poured from his nose. "Who taught you that?" Oliver asked. "Cash, before Wolverine killed him last fall. Cash says they call it a Liverpool kiss." "Some kiss. Look at him. You might have killed him." "Hopefully," Finn said. "You've made a powerful enemy," one of the hairy fellow's companions said. "He'll kill you for this." "Maybe." Catalina and Little Dove rushed in and gave him a group hug. "What about me?" Oliver asked. "You were brave, but you don't get one," Catalina said. "Drat."
This concludes Part 5 of Finn Sullivan Mountain Man, Rattlesnake, Book 2 by author Scotty V. Casper, published by Dusty Saddle Publishing. Thank you for joining us on our read, and stay tuned for Part 6. Pick up more from Scotty V. Casper on Amazon, available on Kindle and paperback. Visit our website at dspublishingnetwork.com. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you have enjoyed listening to this story. Until next time.